And we continue at 1:06 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wiggs in Culver City.
John, usually when you hear some bizarre song on this show, it's something that my crazy brain came up with. Well, not today. This idea, which I did produce, came to us from listener John, who wrote in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com with a simple question. What would it sound like if California governor candidate Javier Baccaria was in the band Devo?
Scrub it. Scrub it. Scrub it.
Oh, boy, I miss the 80s. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. When former California Governor Gray Davis was presiding over the Golden State during the electricity crisis, the people of California had enough. Signatures were collected. Enough of them were turned in to put a recall on the ballot, and California voters elected to dump Gray Davis in favor of actor Arnold Schwarzenegger. During the COVID-19 pandemic, people in California were upset at Warden Newsom's lockdowns, making it so that children could not go to school on campus. People were locked inside their homes. Another effort was underway to collect signatures to put a recall on the ballot. That effort was successful. In that election, voters opted to keep Gavin Newsom in. Since then, he was reelected to another 4-year term. Now he's hosting podcasts and wants to be president. And there is yet another effort to collect signatures to recall Gavin Newsom from office. And the question now becomes, is that the best way to deal with Gavin Newsom and his failures, or are we better off looking forward to the next election and try not to elect yet another Gavin Newsom type of candidate to that office to try to put this state on the right track? Joining us to discuss this are two people who have very different ideas as to what should happen with that effort. Let's start with the man who was responsible for getting the last recall on the ballot. You can follow him on X at Economy Radio. Randy Economy, welcome.
Hey, John, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us this Friday. On
My
the
pleasure.
other side, thank you. On the other side is the chairwoman of the LA County Republican Party, who you can follow on X at Roxanne Hoge. Roxanne Hoge, Chairwoman Hoge, welcome.
Quite frankly, absolutely glad to be here.
She wins.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's start out with you, Randy. Lay out the case. Give us your website. Lay out the case. Why is it that Gavin Newsom should be recalled right now?
Well, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out why we need to fire Gavin Newsom. And I think once California start getting their $8.25 gallons of gas coming up, and when you start seeing the deterioration of the California dream, we live in a state. There's not a lot of states that we can hold our elected officials at the highest level, at the state level, and even at the local level, and that's the power of the recall. We're not reinventing, rocket science here. We're firing a crappy politician. And I think once we understand just how simple it is to realize that the people are in charge of California, not political bosses, not people, pundits, it's people. And I think that's one of the main reasons after I saw and we went through the horrific fires this past January, something clicked inside me saying, we have one last chance at this. If not, I don't know if this man's going to become the next president of the United States, but I do know that he needs to be fired as the governor of California. He can't handle the job. So enough is enough. I have a phenomenal team of leaders and volunteers who are out slaying themselves right now, picking up petitions. We have collected hundreds of thousands of petitions thus far. So we're on our way. We have until September 3rd, and Bring it on, Gavin.
All right, now let's turn to the chairwoman of the LA County Republican Party, who's speaking as an individual and not on behalf of the Republican Party, Roxanne Hoge. Roxanne, what's the argument for trying to select a better governor in the next election, the next gubernatorial election, which would be in 2026, where we already have a number of declared candidates, including Steve Hilton and Sheriff Chad Bianco and others?
I'll leave on my LA GOP, and that's the Los Angeles GOP, Grand Ole Party, LAGOP.org hat on for a second to say our argument as Californians with half a brain is with the vast number of people who don't pay that much attention and who think that the Democrat Party of old still exists. And so our argument is with math. And so while the party takes no stance on this particular recall, and I do agree that the word of the day is oleaginous, it's falsely or smugly earnest, and that is Gavin Newsom, a.k.a. Eddie Haskell, to a T. Yes, he should be fired, but more than that, the best comeuppance for someone so incredibly thirsty is to let him be irrelevant. Giving him a recall is like bringing out more cameras when the Real Housewives show up. The guy has no chance unless the recall qualifies and it erases all of the campaign finance laws and he gets to raise unlimited funds of money. You know, the Democrats are really good at one thing. It's playing Calvin ball. So after the recall got to the ballot in 21, and we were all excited about that, they changed the rules. You've always been able to raise unlimited money, but they're really specialists at that. And I think our time is better focused as people who would like to see good governance and not be mugged, is to focus on fixing the math and getting more people to register as Republican and unregister as Democrat.
So, Randy, how about that? We have two Republican candidates who have already declared in the next election, including Steve Hilton, the Fox commentator, and Chad Bianco, the sheriff of Riverside County. They're raising money. They are putting their websites up. They're traveling around the state. They're doing media interviews. Why not focus on that?
It's not about focusing on the next set of candidates. It's about firing this particular political party boss in Gavin Newsom. So I'm not really interested in Steve Hilton or Chad Bianco or Rick Grinnell or anybody else who might get into the governor's race. My job is to fire this governor. He deserves to be fired. I remember the second night of the fires, I got a call from Mel Gibson, and he says, "Randy, this is Mel Gibson. I don't care what needs to happen, but we can't live with this guy anymore. He has destroyed. These fires are going to prove that there was negligence, and when I don't know how many other natural or man-made disasters are going to take place between now and January 2027 when he gets done being governor. But all I do know is right now is that we can't afford this, and we have the opportunity, thank God, to be able to go ahead and to use the recall provision. Yes, they have changed the laws that it's going to be absolutely virtually impossible starting January 1st, 2026 to be able to hold our elected officials accountable. I know there's a recall going on right now against Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass. They're having a really, really tough time, and it's Karen Bass, for God's sakes. So I understand politics probably better than anybody. I've been doing this for 50 years. I know I'm only 65, but I've been doing this a hell of a long time. And never in my wildest dreams would I think that I'd have to be talking to a chairman of an opposing party of Governor Newsom and having her defend this man's tenure as governor of California. I'm astonished.
Now, how about that, Roxanne?
Randy, I don't think you heard me do any of those things. I find that fascinating. I was very clear. A, I'm speaking as an individual, and B, at no point did I defend.
Yeah, but Roxanne, you wouldn't. Roxanne, you wouldn't be on this show right now if you were just Roxanne Hoge. But the simple fact of the matter is that
you. I was on this show as Roxanne Hoge before. So yes, I would be. John and I have had many great political
for this
conversations.
particular, I don't have time to waste arguing with you. But what I do have is the fact that I have the facts on our side. We are working our asses off to hold this one crappy politician accountable. If political party bosses, such as yourself, choose not to get involved, that's great. But the simple fact of the matter is you're on this program today because you are the chairman of the LA County Republican Party. That's it.
Well, let's ask John. Is that the only reason I'm here? I think I was clear that I'm here speaking as an individual who is an activist and has a pretty good following in Los Angeles and understands. By the way, there isn't an active recall of Karen Bass, so you're mistaken on that.
Of course, there's an active recall of Karen Bass.
Well, let's go to the point that Randy made earlier. Mel Gibson called him. He's upset. His home burned down, and he says, "I can't wait until 2026 because I don't want this guy making decisions, big decisions between now and then." What do you say to people? And I'm sure the county Republican Party, and I'm sure just when you're at the grocery store or out and about, whatever, you talk to people. May not be, Mel Gibson, but you talk to people who are very angry at the condition of the state, at Gavin Newsom. What should that type of person do to harness their anger and harness their willingness to get involved?
Well, it turns out they're actually, and this is why Oleaginous describes perfectly, they're not that, just like he skated by the last one, they're not holding him accountable because the truth is the LA City Council, Karen Bass, and the Board of Supervisors hold all the marbles on the things that affect us daily. And so that is a much more important, closer to us thing that we should be doing. I would say, I don't know why, Randy, you've decided to go into personal animus and being angry. I will say that as a parent, if my kid brings home friends that I don't like, even despise, the worst thing you can do is sort of rant and rave and go on about them and how terrible they are. That makes people stick their heels in. And I think somehow he is Teflon, man. I don't like it. I think he has a glass jaw. I don't think he's going to get anywhere in the presidential race. And I think that fixing our lack of interest in local elections will, at the end of the day, that's what I am interested in as a citizen. I'm a naturalized citizen, and that's what I'm interested in doing, because at the end of the day, that's what will fix things. By the way, love Mel Gibson, and should Mel want to run for anything in LA, like if he lives in the city of LA and he'd like to run for mayor, we should talk, because that's where the real problems are. Mayor, supervisor, city council, those are the places where we can really make a difference in LA, and you see it here every day.
Now, Randy, as chairwoman of the county party, Roxanne's job is to register Republican voters to get Republican candidates elected to office. If there is another recall attempt that is unsuccessful, doesn't that make Gavin Newsom's hand of cards stronger? And doesn't it make the job for the opposition party harder if he comes out of this looking stronger than he did before?
Well, first of all, it's hard being a Republican in California. Especially, it's almost impossible to be an effective Republican in Los Angeles County right now. So, Roxanne, you have a huge job to do in front of you to go ahead and start getting some people elected to the Assembly and the Senate, people in Sacramento. I think right now, I took a look yesterday, I think there's just one resident of Los Angeles County who serves in the state legislature. Some other people represent parts of LA County, but who live in other parts of California, like in Orange County, and their districts bleed into LA. So you have a huge job to do as chairman of the party. And I know financially it's tough. Campaigns are hard. Raising money as a party chair is almost impossible these days. I don't know how much money you have cash on hand right now, but I do know right now that we're at a critical stage here in California. Our responsibility as voters are to be able to pull the recall card, and I'm calling it the recall card, when we don't have any last resorts. We don't have any last resorts on this man. And I don't care if he's fired by July 4th of next year. If we can trim 6 months off of his term, I think that's going to make a difference. We're trying to
So
fire
when
him.
is this on the ballot? Like, what's your timeline, Randy? Because it seems to me that
Well, we
if you
haven't-
get it
sure.
on the ballot in 2026, then we only do get, like, what your goal is to shorten it by 2 months when he's already a lame
No,
duck?
that's not true at all. We have until September 4th is our drop deadline to be able to collect 1,300,000 signatures. So that's our drop deadline. So it's up to the Secretary of State to call the election, and so it could be as early as November, into November, beginning of December of 2025. So that's kind of where we're at time-wise, and that's before the new set of laws go into effect starting on January 1st, 2026, in regards to recalls.
Roxanne,
But
I'll go to you.
The unlimited money is forever, right?
I hope Gavin has to raise $200 million to keep his job. I think it'd be fabulous to be able to have him do that. That'd be great.
All right, Roxanne, last question is for you. We have the next election on the ballot in 2026. There are 2 Republican candidates, or more than that, but 2 candidates who've been making noise, including the 2 I mentioned before, or the 2 I mentioned before, I guess I should say, Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton. How confident are you that at least one of those Republicans can make the November ballot so California voters will have an opportunity to hear at least 2 different worldviews for the future of the state of California?
I'm very confident if people understand that LA is the key to the kingdom. If you can lose LA County by less, we can actually swing the election statewide, and that requires everybody taking a step to the right. So if you're a Democrat and you're listening, drop the D. If you're NPP and you haven't registered Republican, Randy, I think you've said, I need everyone to register Republican. I know lots of people aren't, and that making the numbers move is the biggest gift we can have. Join me on June 14th in Santa Monica. It'll be, I'll be with Carl DeMaio and Scott Pressler, and we will all be working towards that goal.
And what's the county party website if people want to find you online?
lagop.org.
And Randy, what's your website if people want to get more information about the recall?
Sure, John. It's savingcalifornia.vote. Savingcalifornia.vote.
All right. Randy Economy with the effort to recall Gavin Newsom from office. Roxanne Hoge, the chairwoman of the LA County Republican Party, speaking on behalf of herself as a citizen and individual and not on behalf of the party this afternoon. Roxanne, Randy, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you, John.
All right, you heard the arguments for and against another attempt to recall Gavin Newsom from office. What say you at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. You just heard from Roxanne Hoge and Randy Economy making their case for and against the recall of Gavin Newsom. Do you think we should try to recall Gavin Newsom from office again or just wait until the next election? 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. You just heard the debate, the arguments both for and against another recall attempt of California Governor Gavin Newsom. What say you at 800-222-5222? Let's begin with Katie in Costa Mesa. Katie, welcome.
Hi. I absolutely think Gavin Newsom needs to be recalled, and I wish and hope that they could do it both at the same time, work together to really get the message out there about Gavin Newsom. And they have to overcome the media and really embarrass him and show some of the idiotic moves that these Democrats have done to destroy California. And then hopefully the voting system isn't as crooked as I know it is, but nobody seems to want to admit to that either. But, yeah, we definitely need to send a message that Democrats in all cities, all counties need to be voted out. And people really have to get going to make it happen locally and statewide.
All right. Thank you for the call, Katie. Let's go to Dan in Sonoma. Dan, hello.
Well, there's a couple of things I want to say. That during the Gray Davis recall, there was a big name that was floated out there in the form of Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's actually a horrible governor, but his name recognition got that recall going, got Davis out, and put Schwarzenegger in. If a recall begins soon, or as your guest Randy suggests, there is no big name at this point. I suspect that Newsom will survive yet another recall, and that would make him sort of a Teflon Don, which is the last thing we need for him going into the presidential election. What will stop him, as you mentioned before, will be if these economists are correct saying that we're going to have $8 a gallon of gas this time next year. That's more than enough to stop Newsom for getting to the White House. I don't even think he's going to get the nomination, to be honest with you. He's hated across the country. But this recall would be a huge obstacle and something that would be it would work against us in a big way. This should not happen.
Well, I'm trying to game this out in my head, what it would look like if there was a recall election on the same ballot as the regularly scheduled election, because I think that is realistically what we would be seeing in real time. And if Kamala Harris runs for governor, all the focus is going to be on her, whether or not she knew Joe Biden was demented or for whatever reason didn't think that he was, whether or not she cares about subjects in California, if she's going to run for president, should she win the California governor's office, all of those things. Regardless of if the story is positive or negative, the focus will be on her. And Gavin Newsom will be a lame duck, outgoing governor, and he'll be yesterday's news. If there's a recall, the focus will probably be equal on Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom, with maybe even more of a focus on Gavin Newsom. He is such a narcissist, I'm not sure he wouldn't enjoy that.
Well, two other things to focus in on. Every time there's been a recall or a special election, it becomes a zoo. All these weirdo characters come out of the woodwork, and that's more just a distraction. And as a former ranking member of the Republican Party, I know this party. I don't trust them because when they'll do things to work against any conservative. If a conservative pops up, you had Larry Elder run in I think the first recall election. They openly did not endorse him, and they did this on purpose because he was conservative. So again, it's a no-win scenario right now. I say just let things play out. It will work out for the best. We're probably going to get stuck with Kamala Harris. That's just the way it is. But regarding Newsom, trust me, he's already cut his own throat politically.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to Brad in Orange County. Brad, hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
I'd like to take us back to a film that we're all familiar with for context. If you go back, blow the dust off Stephen King's Dead Zone movie with Christopher Walken. And I'm not saying that Gavin Newsom's, drooling at the mouth to push a, nuclear button that ends civilization as we know it. But I think you have to look at this in a couple of ways. Here's the first way I think you need to look at it. Are we willing as a state to try and keep Gavin Newsom from having a better shot at becoming president of the United States or not? Okay? Put that to the side. As far as the California landscape goes, I respectfully disagree with it. It's a done deal that Newsom's throat is cut. This hair-gelled viper in a dark room, I think the analysis needs to be this. I don't think that it really matters whether he were to be recalled or not. I think you have to take a broader view of this and say to yourself, is this going to make Newsom weaker or stronger, whether it's on the state scene or the national scene? And let me juxtapose this. Take a Donald Trump who literally takes a bullet. You throw something at Donald Trump like a stick. Donald Trump collects all the sticks that everybody throws at him, ties them up into a nice club, and then beats you over the head with it. Now, look at Newsom after his first recall situation. What I remember from it predominantly is he would say, what a waste of taxpayer dollars. But if somebody can look at that recall, the 1.0 recall, quote, failed attempt, and see what that cost him, not just fiscally, what that cost him in terms of making him weaker, that needs to be an analysis. I don't think you look for a recall victory on this. I think the victory is a weakened and a stymied and a slowed and less efficacious Gavin Newsom, whether he's got his sights set in California, which is kind of a done deal, so that's a moot point, or on the broader stage in the United States and trying to save not just California, but the other 49 states from a Gavin Newsom president of the United States. So those are my thoughts on it. Don't expect a recall, but look at this and see what it does to weaken him, what we learned from the first recall that we can use in this second potential recall. And those are my 2 cents worth.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. Let's go to John in San Luis Obispo County. John, welcome.
John hung up.
All right. Let's go to Travis in Oakland. Travis, hello.
If Gavin is allowed to collect unlimited finances to fight the recall, will he then be allowed to roll that money into a political PAC and use it for his presidential campaign after the recall? Say if there's money left over. If that's the case, a recall would be the best gift you could give Gavin. You could supercharge his fundraising. There's still idiots in California that think he's great. I think it's the last thing we should do if that's the case, but I don't know. Maybe you guys do.
I'm not an expert on campaign finance law. I can tell you this, though. If I recall correctly, to borrow a word, when he was spending money on billboards in other states, going after other states about their abortion laws, he was using money from his bank account that he had during the recall election. He didn't spend all of his money on the recall. He saved a lot of it. And it's my understanding that that's the money that he's using to spend in other states to troll Ron DeSantis or to troll the governor of Texas or other states to elevate his profile nationally.
So he could use the money to troll Donald Trump.
I assume
he could probably
so.
do that during the recall.
I assume so.
Well,
thank you for the call, sir. I appreciate it. Let's go to Rocco in Saugus. Rocco, welcome.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me on. Recall Newsom. Don't care what it costs the voters in California. We have to trash him, so that the national election can use it and trash him. We want AOC on the other side. Her and another clown candidate for vice president would be perfect. We trounce them. So we have to get out all the dirt on Newsom over and over again and just destroy him. How do you feel about that?
Well, it could backfire. In politics, you have to worry about the law of unintended consequences. And if you attack Gavin Newsom, then he's going to be relevant to the news cycle because he's being attacked and he's going to respond. And everything on cable news plays off of drama. And the drama would be good for making him relevant. I think the larger problem that Gavin Newsom is going to have is that he's not going to be relevant. When you're a lame duck and you are someone who is not putting your name on the ballot in the current election cycle, it's real easy for people to forget who you are. For example, Gray Davis was someone that everyone knew when he was the governor of California. If Gray Davis were to walk down Hollywood Boulevard right now, out of 100 people, how many do you think would even recognize who he is? And he was one of the biggest names in the state when he was in office. And the fact of the matter is we have very, very, very limited memories. So these people become yesterday's news almost immediately if they aren't right in front of you. With babies, they call that object permanence, where mom leaves the room and the baby thinks that mom doesn't exist because mom isn't in the line of sight, so the baby starts screaming. Voters are kind of that way too. If you give him a reason to be relevant, I think he benefits from that. The biggest problem that he's going to have is that he is going to be, if he runs for president, he's going to be a former governor. And there are a lot of people all over cable news who are former somebodies. It's so much easier to make news and to be relevant if you're a current somebody as opposed to a former somebody.
Is it good that I pose the question, is it good that he's relevant or relevant in a way that he comes off as evil? Now, that's a great way to be relevant for us if he comes off as evil.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. When Donald Trump became a candidate in 2015, the mainstream media, who all hates him, gave him nothing but negative attention. It was all negative attention for Donald Trump because they hated his politics. They didn't like the fact that he was attacking people that they liked. The whole bit. We're familiar with it. And voters saw that negative attention, and it backfired on the mainstream media because a lot of us looked at that and said, oh, there's a lot here that I like. And it worked against them. With Gavin Newsom, I'm not sure if it'll work for him or against him. That is in the future, and I can't predict the future. I can tell you this. The main battle he's going to have, and this is why he's doing the podcast, and this is why he's going on all of these television shows, is that he is going to become yesterday's news. He is going to become irrelevant very soon, and he knows that. If the calendar worked a little bit differently and he were still in office in 2028, it would be easier for him because then he'd be a current governor. Being a former governor, there's a lot of people out there who are former governors, former senators, former members of Congress, and you just kind of get lost in the pack, and that's what he's fighting against. Thank you for the call, sir. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Let's go back to the phones and welcome Rich in Newport Beach. Rich, hello.
Hey, John. First of all, just a counterpoint to your argument about the relevancy of Gavin. I think a guy like Gavin will be, even out of the office of governor, would be propped up tremendously by the alternative press or the mainstream press, whatever it takes to keep him front and center. I think he'll always be recognizable. That's just my opinion. You may be right. I'm not sure. But I really was calling about on the recall. I think it should be done. It's necessary just to put another stain on his reputation. But he won't be recalled because his loyal base, and I'm talking the public sector union and the liberal media, which is all of California, all the major cities, it'll be a full court press. And then, if it's not during a regular election, the low turnout will be against us. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it could be. You can't obviously see into the future, and sometimes when people are surrounded by negative attention, it benefits them. Sometimes it ruins their reputation and kills off their career. Sometimes there's really no reason for someone to be relevant, but they keep finding ways to be relevant. I mean, you see these people. I mean, that's basically Geraldo Rivera's career, where he found a way to attach himself to every story that people had interest in, and then he would become part of the story. And Geraldo was just relevant for several decades. Gloria Allred has that ability to become part of virtually anything that people are interested in. I'm not necessarily sure that Gavin Newsom has that ability. And I'll say this. When he launched the podcast and was debating Charlie Kirk and saying that he didn't think the transgender athletes should be playing in women's sports, you saw a lot of animosity on the left towards Gavin Newsom starting to bubble up in different places. The option will not be between Gavin Newsom and a Republican for them. The option will be Gavin Newsom and a more electable or more relevant Democrat, because you have to get through the primary first. And I'm not sure that if given other options, they have that much great affection for him. Thank you for the call. Let's go to John in San Francisco. John, hello.
Hello. Thanks for putting me on the air with you.
My pleasure.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. I think that the talk of Gavin Newsom for president is utter folly, because Gavin Newsom, like much of California, is too full of itself. When he gets on the national stage, he's going to try and use the same formula that Kamala Harris did in trying to fail up. And he's just not there. When he debated Ron DeSantis, Santos cut him up. And the whole country, he's exposed to the whole country, they'll find out. I happen to have gone to his announcement speech when he ran for mayor of San Francisco. And his platform and his promise to me, when he looked me in the eye, I asked him, are you going to clean up the homeless situation on my street? And he said, yes. And to date, he has done nothing but throw money at it. And that's what his story is. He's a failure. And all we have to do is point to his record.
All right. Thank you so much for the call, sir. I appreciate it. If you're on hold, stay there. We'll get to more calls right after the news, right here on The John Phillips Show.